Hello. I want to be a better person. I wanted to be a better person when I was baptized. I knew that I was corrupted. I guess I know the world is corrupted, but I wanted something better. Do you want to be better people? I want a better life. Now, don't misunderstand me. I do appreciate everything that I've been given, and I'm a very happy person. People who know me know I'm pretty happy. I'm grateful to be living in this country, in the United States. I guess my circumstances could have been much worse. More than 3 billion people in the world, half of the people in the world live on less than $2.50 a day. Think about that, $2.50 a day. That's how much do we spend each day here at the feast? $2.50 a day. More than 1.3 billion people live on less than $1.25 a day. And 1 billion of those people who live in poverty are children. So that is what Satan's system has done for the world. Satan's government, Satan's way of life. You could say that it's a disaster. It is a disaster to have that many people in our world who live in poverty. So will there be poverty in the kingdom of God? I guess the best estimates for the amount of people who have ever lived is 108 billion people. Like from the time of Adam and Eve until now, 108 billion people have lived on this earth. I would say that 107 billion probably did not live a very good life. The majority of the people did not live a life as luxurious, as wonderful as we have in our country. So we're lucky to be in this country we live in, the United States, and I guess some of those from Canada or for Australia or for some of these great countries that we live in, we find ourselves very lucky. And I believe that this country is, right now, is the greatest place to be with the greatest standard of living ever. And we're here keeping the Feast of Tabernacles because we all want something better. We want something better. But we are here keeping this because we know that the kingdom of God is much better. In Revelation 21:4, looking to the very end, to the fulfillment of the kingdom for everyone, it says, "And God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There shall be no more death, nor sorrow, nor crying. There shall be no more pain, for the former things have passed away." Let's turn to Genesis chapter 12. Genesis chapter 12. And so, knowing that there is something better for the entire world, for everyone, I don't know about you, but I want something better. Genesis 12 and verse 12, verse 1, it says, "Now the Lord had said to Abram, get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house, to a land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse him who curses you, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." Now, as things go, if we think about lives lived, Abram, as we know with Abraham, he had a pretty good life. He had possessions. He had a lot of servants. Had a wife. But yet he was 75 years old at this point and was childless, had no children. So imagine, even though he had all those wonderful blessings and had all that stuff, I think Abram, he wanted something better. He wanted children. Is there anyone in here who's 75 years or older? probably a few, or close to it. Imagine God asking you to get up, to leave where you're at, start a new life. Are you up for that? I think a lot of people in here would be, right? Because we know there's something better. So he was willing to leave his life and go for something better. Hebrews 11 verse 8 says, by faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to the place which he would receive as an inheritance. And he went out not knowing where he was going. By faith he dwelt in the land of promise, as in a foreign country, dwelling in tents. So he was looking for something better, wanting something better, yet dwelling in tabernacles, dwelling in tents, a temporary place with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs of him of the same promise. For he waited for the city which has foundations, whose builder and maker is God. So Abraham wanted something better. There's a lot of talk in our country about immigrants. A lot of talk about immigrants. And so I'm going to talk about immigrants, but believe me, I'm not going to talk about it from a political perspective. Right? What I want to do is look at immigration from a biblical perspective. And really, just to look at what is the motivation of someone who is an immigrant. Of someone who's an immigrant. And again, what did they come to our country? To Australia, Russia, Canada, Germany, Israel, or wherever. There have always been people who have, they've been immigrants, they've been looking for something better. And if it wasn't for a lot of them, right, we wouldn't be here, right? If there wasn't people who wanted something better, none of us would be here in this country, in this building, in this place today. And we know civilization began in the Middle East, and after the Tower of Babel, people separated and they migrated to all corners of the earth. And we know the Americas were most likely first populated by folks who, they entered into Alaska. That's what they think. There was like the land bridge and people entered into Alaska. And the thing is, the people who went to Alaska, did they get there and they said, all right, we're happy with Alaska? No, some of them said we're going to go over towards eastern Canada. And maybe some of my relatives said, well, we're going to head south. We're going to head south where it's warmer. We want to get, where there's warmer climates. And so there was the group of immigrants who first came to this North America, and they came from Canada, and they spread all over, all the way down to the tip of South America. And then thousands of years later, immigrants from Europe came here. And the European immigrants, they were looking for something better. And they brought Africans with them. And then Asians, we have the whole variety of people who live in this country. And every one of the people who have come here are looking for something better. And again, I understand why people want to come here. Because this is, in many respects, one of the greatest nations to have ever existed. And probably right now, believe it or not, it's one of the greatest times to live as far as material wealth, possessions, the comforts we have, the ability just to go to a restaurant and have a nice meal, food in the grocery store, the numerous amounts of entertainment and things that we have. We have so many blessings in here. And so I understand why people would want to come to this country. And imagine if we ever build a colony on Mars, there's going to be people that say, you know what, the Earth is fine, but I want to go to Mars because I want to do something better. I want to start out fresh. And again, I've seen the documentaries. There are people who are willing to go to Mars and die there because they want to do something better for their lives. Genesis 1 verse 28 tells us, then God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. So the key thing I want to look at here is that he says to fill the earth and subdue it, to subdue the earth. I have to wear contacts. Who in here has to wear contacts or glasses? I can see quite a few, right? A lot of us, if I were to remove these contacts, I would not be able to read my notes or see or do anything without the contacts. And I've been lucky that I've recently got progressive contacts, which really helps to see far off and to see the close up. The first eyeglasses were made, and I was, I'm always interested. You can always use the Google, and look up something. And so I Googled, like, when were glasses invented? And they weren't invented until the 13th century in Italy. The 13th century in Italy. So all the people, billions of people who lived before then, I guess they had to squint, or they had to just read things close up, or they just weren't, they couldn't see well, a lot of them. So for the last 700 years, people have been able to have corrected vision. And again, we don't know who invented glasses. We don't know who did that, but whoever invented glasses, they wanted something better. They wanted to be able to see. And that's what God puts into man, to subdue the earth. So we can't see, we'll invent glasses. The printing press made it better for us to publish, to spread information. My favorite invention, air conditioning. And I believe air conditioning is the invention that has sparked a lot of other inventions. You had air conditioning, and then you got computers and all the other things that come, because air conditioning gives you the comfort to sit around and think of new things to invent. And so we have air conditioning because someone didn't want to live in the heat. We have a telephone because someone didn't want to walk across the street to talk to someone. Or now, you can just text someone in the same room. So we have these inventions, these things that make things better. Airplanes were invented for transportation. So all the different inventions we have were people wanting to be better. I've lived in Texas for 7 years. I'm from Tyler, Texas, in a transition of moving to Atlanta, Georgia. I moved to Tyler, Texas because I wanted something better for the Church of God. I still work for the Church of God International, and I wanted something better. I'm moving to Atlanta, Georgia, because I found something better. She's somewhere in here, Ann Geisner, and we're getting married in 1 month from today. So we're getting married in 1 month. And one thing I learned living in Texas, and this is what really surprised me, is that the most revered and sacred place in Texas, and we have Texans in here, right? I know they're in here, right? Yeah. Woo! All right, yeah, Texans. And if I say remember the Alamo, they remember the Alamo. The most sacred place is the Alamo in Texas, and it was actually created as a shrine to honor what were at the time illegal immigrants. And it sounds bizarre. So at the time of the Alamo, Texas was part of Mexico. And Texas under Mexico was not a very good place. And so the brave men of the Alamo, they fought against Santa Anna, and all of them died. Like everyone in the Alamo, they wanted to fight to be independent in Texas, and everyone in Alamo died. And many of the men, they weren't Mexican citizens. They actually came from outside of Texas, came outside of what was Mexico to fight in Texas because they wanted something better. One of the most famous was David Crockett. So David Crockett is one we may know of. There's no evidence that anyone called him Davy. Even less evidence that he killed a bar when he was only 3. But he's an American folk legend. And so a lot of this information that we have about David Crockett, is from a book, A Narrative of the Life of David Crockett, written by himself. So he was eventually a Tennessee congressman. We have some folks from Tennessee here. And he was elected in 1825 to Congress. And while in Congress, he was a big opponent to Andrew Jackson. And he was a very vocal opponent to the Indian Removal Act. that we know of that caused the Trail of Tears, where all the Indians were moved from the east, and they were moved to Oklahoma and out to western parts of the country. So David Crockett was very much opposed to that. And he was the only Tennessee congressman to actually oppose it. And the Cherokee people were very grateful for that. He lost a seat for a couple of years. He gained it back in 1833. But by 1835, he was defeated again. I don't know if his politics were as popular as maybe he was as a folk legend. But by early 1836, David Crockett was fed up with the United States of America. So he wanted to leave the United States. He was a congressman, but he wanted to leave the United States. And so he and some of his followers, they headed to Texas. And so a famous quote from him in the newspapers at the time was, "I told the people of my district that I would serve them so as faithfully as I had done, but if not, they might go to hell, and I would go to Texas." So in January 1836, David Crockett and 65 other men from the U.S. signed up with the Texas Army, and they were promised 4,600 acres, and that's a pretty good bit of Texas, 4,600 acres in Texas as part of their service for signing up. And technically they were illegals, right? They were in Mexico fighting for an independent Texas state. And they had to, get in the best they could, but they were revolutionaries looking for opportunity. A few of the ones who were at the Alamo were wanted for crimes. And Texas was a great place to put that life behind them. And I'm sure that David Crockett had really big plans for his political career in Texas, possibly maybe the president of Texas, we don't know. But unfortunately, 2 months later, he died defending the Alamo. And so in Texas, that the battle cry of "Remember the Alamo" would inspire the Texas Army to eventually defeat Santa Anna and that Texas would become independent. And so that's the way, and this is kind of an example of the way wars and migration have played out for countless centuries around the world. Those type of things happen where people are looking for something better. People fight, they form new countries. We can find parallels in the Middle East. And Middle East, all the time, there's all kinds of people wanting something better or wanting something else, and they're always fighting. Africa, Asia, around the world. But seeking a physical homeland is one thing. It didn't work out for Davy Crockett. It doesn't work out for a lot of people. Sometimes it does. Some people live a comfortable life. But the thing is, and what we know about and why we're here is we know this life is very temporary. Very temporary. And we're reminded here at the feast that we are strangers and pilgrims, and that this world can never truly be our home. And life is very temporary. James chapter 4, verse 13. I said I thought I was going to live in Texas for the rest of my life. I was wrong. Things are very temporary. Things change quite a bit in our lives. James chapter 4, verse 13 says, "Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go to such and such a city. Spend the year there, buy and sell and make a profit, whereas you do not know what will happen tomorrow." Or you can say, I'm gonna go move to like Atlanta, I'm gonna make a profit, we're gonna do all this stuff. But he says, for what is your life? It is even a vapor that appears for a little time and then vanishes away. It doesn't feel that long ago that I was at the previous Feast of Tabernacles. Does it feel that way to y'all when you're here? You kind of, to me, I have this thing called feast time, where it seems like as the older I get, time goes by quicker. Do people kind of get that with me who are older? That the older you get, time goes by quicker. And somebody explained it to me this way, that when you're 10, like maybe 1 year is 1/10 of your life. So I'm nearly 50, so that's 1/50th of my life. And if you're 80, that's 1/80th of your life. So the relativity of that is that it does seem shorter because you have so much more to compare it to, and life seems to get quicker. And for me, the feast time, it seems like all the Feast of Tabernacles have run together in my mind. That when I'm here, I can think about all the other Feast of Tabernacles and all the other great things that I've been a part of with the Feast of Tabernacles. So we've been dwelling in tabernacles for, 3 days now, to remind us that there's something better, a better country, actually a kingdom that we want to be a part of. The Romani people today are a people without a homeland. They are pejoratively referred to as gypsies. So I guess if I had a politically correct title to my sermon, it would be Davy, Crockett, Romani, and Dinosaur Boy, which we'll get to later. They most likely originated from northern India after warfare, and they were most likely displaced about 1,000 years ago. And we figured this out by doing DNA testing on the Romani people, because they don't really have much history, whether it be oral history or written history. There's not much history about the Romani people. They just kind of appeared in Europe, and so we've done the DNA test to kind of figure out where are these people from. There are an estimated 12 million Romani living in Europe and the Americas, with 1 million in the United States alone. There's the traditional Romani or gypsy wagon that we may be familiar with, associated with the people. The gypsies have been romanticized in books like The Hunchback of Notre Dame. I remember an Andy Griffith episode. Who watched the Andy Griffith in here? Where there's a gypsy played by Jamie Farr, of all people, and he placed a curse on the town of Mayberry in that episode. Just last night I watched Gypsies, Tramps, and Thieves, music video by Cher. Y'all remember that? Gypsies, Tramps, and Thieves. And that's been stuck in my head since I watched it. And it's probably stuck in your head now a little bit from me saying that. All right, so we have these ideas of gypsies. And so the Romanis wandered, and they still wander around Europe. And because of being a people without a homeland, they have been highly discriminated against. The Czech Republic, Slovakia, Germany, Norway, Sweden, Switzerland have overt and hidden policies of sterilizing Romanis. They are associated by people in Europe as having high crime rates, living poorly, and they're less civilized than others because they're nomads. As recently as 2008, the Italian government declared the Romani a national security risk. In World War II, the Germans exterminated over 1 million Romani in death camps along with the Jews. And again, there's a similarity with the Jews, because the Jews were a people without a homeland until, 1948. And again, we have the history of them, of the Jewish people coming out of Egypt, seeking the promised land, dwelling in tabernacles. What we're here about, that story as well. And so we as a Christian people here, us, are a unique culture ourselves. And we, believe it or not, are a people without a homeland. We're a people without a homeland. 1 Peter chapter 2 says, therefore, in verse 1, therefore laying aside all malice, all deceit, hypocrisy, envy, and all evil speaking, as newborn babes, desire the pure milk of the word, that ye may grow thereby, if indeed you have tested the Lord as gracious, coming to him as a living stone, rejected indeed by men, but chosen by God and precious. So to be chosen by God is to be rejected by men. And we are seen as strange people. I'm seen as a strange person probably, even though if I wasn't in the church, I would be seen as strange. But we're seen as strange people because we have unusual customs, right? We keep the Feast of Tabernacles. We eat different foods. We have different things. How many of you have explained what you're doing this week to maybe a coworker or people who didn't understand? Sometimes they just look at you like they just don't get it. They don't understand. We are a unique culture in the Church of God. And so I have a few comments of some people from Facebook, and I run the CGI Facebook page. We got about 50,000 followers. Most of them like us, a few don't. So I'm going to read the few that don't. One from a guy named Dan M. He says, you cherry pick all the nice things from the Bible. that you may want to hide all the horrible things. A guy named Brian, he says, watch out for this group they call mainstream Christians, falsely so called. They are a cult. They are in the famous book Kingdom of the Cults. They believe in Old Testament law, and they celebrate a lot of Old Testament festivals, and they believe that all Christians are bound to follow them. Yeah? And then Sharon, she writes, she says, your church has to be among one of the most powerfully oppressive cults of all. Your skewed teachings are nothing more than a vile form of mental abuse. And she goes on. So again, I get those comments quite a bit, working in the evangelistic outreach that we do. But I do remember when I was in high school, and then before I was in church, I had a friend who would leave every 2 weeks to go to the Feast of Tabernacles. I wasn't in church. Again, and then I started thinking 2 weeks, that's like 8 days. But so he would leave for 2 weeks and go to the Feast of Tabernacles, and I didn't like it. I didn't like it that I was still in school and my friend got to leave for 2 weeks. So the kids there, maybe, I don't know how your friends think of it, but I didn't like it. And so one of the years when he was away, the locker above his was empty. And there was a way that you could go to the locker and you could pull up the locker and you could get into his locker. And I said, well, and we decided that we just throw our garbage into his locker while he was at the Feast of Tabernacles. So every day, pull it open, put some garbage in there, and then you would know after garbage of 2 weeks worth, his locker was full of garbage when he returned from the Feast of Tabernacles. And it was bad, stinking trash. And I do remember what happened when he returned, because I was sitting on a stairway, so I could observe. I was at a distance. I want to see what happened, but I didn't want to be implicated in any of this. And then, but I remember it opened, it happened, and one of the teachers said, I bet it was that Jeff Reed guy. He's a real troublemaker. I guess I've done quite a few other things that I won't go into right now. I don't know if the statute of limitations has expired on some of those things. But I do remember my friend, Paul, and that he would talk about, these different things, and he was different. He would not eat pork and would keep the holy days. He was the first person that I talked to who told me about the Sabbath day. And so later when I started attending the Feast of Tabernacles, I wanted to see if I could find Paul, see if he was still in the church. And I found out he had committed suicide. I really wanted something better for him from that. So back to 1 Peter verse 9. So you're a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, his own special people, that you may proclaim the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light, who were once not a people, but are now the people of God, who had not obtained mercy, but now have attained mercy. So again, I talked about how we're on feast time. And my first Feast of Tabernacles was in 93, so 26 years. So I feel that's pretty good. Some of y'all think, we've been doing it for 60 years or 80 years or whatever. All right, so 26 years is pretty good. And so in 93 is when I first fully embraced the culture of the nation of God. My first feast was in Panama City Beach. Any of y'all went to Panama City Beach for a feast back in the day? And the first hotel I stayed at was called the Rest a While. So the Rest a While probably had 20 rooms. It was $80 for a week. So $80 for a week. I think we talked them into giving us an extra day. So we had $80 for 8 days at the Rest a While. And the way to describe the structure of the Rest a While, the entire structure would be described as termites holding hands. So termites holding hands. And they were actually fumigating when I was there. So they were fumigating on one end. And so what would happen, they would fumigate on the other end the Rest a While. In my room, all the bugs would start migrating, right? They start migrating into my room at the Rest a While. And I also remember that in this complex, there was what we actually referred to, because I was staying there with some friends, we referred to as Dinosaur Boy. So Dinosaur Boy was on the other side of the building, and he would, I guess this was 93, Jurassic Park come out, and so when I would walk over to see my friends who had the car, he would be doing his little dinosaur walk and yelling at me and doing the dinosaur thing and And so for me, this is my first time I'm there. I would just make my way, try to avoid Dinosaur Boy, because I don't know if he's going to bite me or what was going to happen, but I do remember him. And one of the things I did notice, because the hotel we were in, we were probably the only ones who were staying there who weren't living there. Because a lot of people, and again, Dinosaur's boy, who is now, I guess, Dinosaur Man, right? It's been 26 years. So his family were immigrants, and they were living there, working in Panama City Beach, trying to, make a better life for themselves. So I think about that. I think of, that experience, and actually, even though I stayed there, it was great, right? To embrace the culture of God, to be at that Feast of Tabernacles, that first Feast of Tabernacles. It was very fulfilling. But I loved it so much. But today we are at the Feast of Tabernacles. And we are here because we want something better. The something better we can see in Hebrews 11. It's the something better for Davy Crockett. The something better for the Gypsies, for Dinosaur Boy, for your family, my family, everyone. My friend Paul, we can read in Hebrews 11 and verse 13. It says, "These all died in the faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, were assured of them, embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. For those," verse 14, "for those who say such things declare plainly that they seek a homeland. And truly, if they called to mind that country from which they had come out, they would have had opportunity to return. But now they desire a better country, that is, a heavenly country. Therefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them." I want to be a better person. Do you all want to be better? Do we want to be better people? Right? We want to be better people. And the thing is, the reason we are all here gathered at the Feast of Tabernacles is because we want something better. And we have found something better, right? If you're here at the Feast of Tabernacles, you found something better. You found the way. We're part of that nation. We're part of that kingdom that's going to come. And we're going to be a part of that better place. So if you're here, you found it. So let's rejoice and praise God.